My name is Les Munro, ex-bomber pilot that served on 617 Squadron in the war. I served in the RNZAF and was attached to the RAF for the duration of my time with 97 Squadron and 617 Squadron, and subsequently with 1690 Bomber Defence Training Flight. One of the strengths of 617 Squadron was its cosmopolitan nature of the makeup of the aircrew. We had the bulk, of course, was English servicemen, but there was a considerable percentage of Canadians, of Australians. There was admittedly not very many New Zealanders, but I thought the Commonwealth nature of the build or the makeup of the squadron was one of its strengths. Well, I volunteered after I'd passed out or gained my wins at elementary flying training school. We were asked whether we wanted to be fighter pilots or bomber pilots, and for some, I'm rather conservative in nature, and I've sort of felt that bomber pilots would suit my makeup much better than a flamboyant fighter pilot, and I was quite happy with right through the war. I had no regrets about opting to be a bomber pilot rather than a fighter pilot, and I enjoyed flying the bombers, particularly Lancasters, and I think that I never regretted the decision I made early on to be a bomber pilot. Well, my strongest memory really is what we call the Cheshire era. At the time I served with Leonard Cheshire as my commanding officer, and the period that I spent under him, firstly after he first came to the squadron, and subsequently as one of his flight commanders. And I always look back on that period that I spent under Leonard Cheshire and served with him as one of the outstanding features of my service. It was decided that it would be a special squadron would be formed to carry out the attack on the Dams raid. I read a circular letter from 5 Group headquarters calling for volunteers from crews that had nearly completed their first tour of 30 operations, or crews that were just commencing the second operations, and I discussed with my crew the question of whether I should volunteer, and they agreed that I should, other than my rear gunner, who opted not to come with us, and the rest of the crew had said yes. In my view, I think that I always say that Guy Crippen, to me, he was a disciplinarian, he was a very dogmatic, no doubt he was a brave man and a good leader, but he didn't suffer fools gladly. He would make up his mind, and he didn't accept arguments over particular points. That his view was the only one that mattered, and that was a feature of his makeup. I enjoyed flying the Lancaster. I thought it was a beautiful aircraft to fly. It was very simple to fly, had no vices, and I enjoyed flying the Lancaster. I had a great deal of time for the Lancaster, and I believe that it was a marvellous aeroplane. We had to fly low level all the way from base across to a point just north of the island of Velan, and we turned south to cross the coast over the island, and had gained height to clear the sand dunes at that point, and had just cleared the crest and was losing height to level out over the Wadden Sea when I was hit by a single shell, flak shell, which severed the communication system, electrical systems, and we lost all intercommunication between myself, the pilot, and the other crew members. It was rather disconcerting to be unable to converse through the intercom. The only way we could speak to each other by lifting the flaps on our helmets and speaking, yelling into the ears of whoever we're trying to speak to. When it happened, I asked my wireless operator if he would go back and firstly check on the health of the rear gunner, see whether he was okay, and secondly to inspect the damage to see and he was probably the most appropriate one to determine whether it was possible to reconnect the communication system, and he'd come back and said no, it was impossible to repair it. So I made the decision then to abort the mission and return to base. I think, well, because of the damage to the intercom system, we had no one able to communicate, so it was very silent aircraft on the way return. I think the crew, I'm not sure, I never ever discussed it with the crew afterwards, but in my own case, I was feeling that okay, I'd not necessarily failed in my job of getting to the target and back. But no, I think to say what it was like, I think we travelled back in silence without communication with the others, and I think it was everybody had their own thoughts. But, in my case, I don't think that I worried too much about. Well, I was concerned that I had not achieved what I was set out to do, and that was attack the Sorbie Dame. Sort of disappointing that the losses were so heavy. I think those that survived were nevertheless were disappointed that so many had lost their lives, and there was a certain degree of sadness by those that had come back, but it didn't last to any great extent, and the celebrations the crews that did survive celebrated the fact that the Munro and the Ada had both been damaged or breached, and the main objective of the operation had been successful. I'm not sure whether it was fate, but when I enlisted in the RNZAF, I never thought for a moment that I would become involved on an operation that became history, recognised worldwide as a major achievement by the RAF in the form of 617 Squadron. And I've always looked back with a great deal of pride and satisfaction. I was thinking, if I said earlier, particularly the time I spent under Leonard Cheshire, I think was outstanding in my experience, and I always look back on that particular period with pride that I actually had the opportunity to serve with Leonard Cheshire and under him.